Buckingham Palace, the full history, the real story. The sun was sinking over London, scattering a crimson glow across the sky. Clouds hung heavy, drifting above the grandeur of Buckingham Palace. The white stone walls seemed to hold centuries of secrets, guarded by the iconic soldiers in their scarlet uniforms. But this story is not just about the palace, it is about a dream that crossed oceans, stitched into the lives of ordinary people who looked to the symbol of royalty as something more than stone and marble. Scene 1, Brooklyn, New York, 1975. Mom, I want to go to London. 17-year-old Faiz Ahmed stood by the cracked window of his family's apartment in Brooklyn. Outside, the streets buzzed with sirens, car horns, and the restless rhythm of the city that never slept. His parents had left Karachi a decade earlier, chasing the American dream. His father drove a yellow cab through Manhattan, 12 hours a day, and his mother stitched clothes at home for neighbors to make ends meet. But Faiz's heart was restless. While his friends idolized Yankee Stadium or Times Square, Faiz collected books on England, postcards of the River Thames, and newspaper clippings of Buckingham Palace. To him, it was more than a royal residence, it was a fortress of history, a place where power, sacrifice, and destiny collided. His mother shook her head. London is far, Beta. We came to America for you. Don't waste your life chasing castles and kings. But to Faiz, this was not about castles or kings. It was about belonging. Scene 2, The Struggle. Years passed. Faiz studied history at City College, waiting tables at night. He wrote essays about how empires rise and fall, about how monuments outlive men. But his obsession with Buckingham Palace deepened when he discovered a truth buried in his family's past. One evening, his father, tired, coughing from too many cigarettes, pulled an old letter from a tin box. Your great-grandfather, Ahmed Ali, he said quietly, served in the British Indian Army during World War II. He was stationed in Europe. They say he once stood guard near Buckingham Palace after the Blitz. He never spoke of it, but I kept this. Inside the envelope was a faded photograph, a young soldier in a turban, stiff in his uniform, the faint silhouette of Buckingham Palace behind him. Faiz's chest tightened. Suddenly the palace wasn't just a symbol of royalty. It was a bridge to his bloodline. Scene 3, Crossing the Ocean. By 1985, Faiz had saved enough for a one-way ticket. He arrived in London with 2 suitcases, a notebook, and dreams larger than reality. The city felt like another world: foggy mornings, double-decker buses, and the echo of Big Ben. But when he stood before Buckingham Palace for the first time, something inside him cracked open. He pressed his hand against the black iron gates, watching tourists snap photos. The palace rose like a giant from another age, each stone whispering stories of war, coronations, and betrayal. In that moment, Faiz felt both small and infinite. Scene 4, The Twist of Fate. London, however, was not kind. Faiz struggled to find steady work. He washed dishes, slept in cold flats, and sometimes skipped meals. Yet he returned to the palace every week, scribbling notes, sketching details, researching archives in dusty libraries. He told himself he would one day write the real story of Buckingham Palace, not about kings and queens, but about the ordinary people connected to it, the guards, the immigrants, the forgotten soldiers like his great-grandfather. But fate had darker plans. One rainy night in 1989, Faiz was walking home when 2 men cornered him in an alley. They were desperate, strung out, looking for money. A fight broke out. Faiz, though thin and tired, resisted. In the struggle, he was stabbed. He survived, but barely. Weeks in hospital, scars that never faded. And yet, even in pain, his thoughts returned to the palace. If I die, he whispered to himself, my story dies too. Scene 5, Redemption. The brush with death hardened Fayez's resolve. He recovered, and with the help of a kind British librarian, Eleanor, who admired his passion, he began piecing together his book. Eleanor believed in him when no one else did. She gave him access to private archives, encouraged him to apply for grants, and reminded him that history belonged to those brave enough to tell it. Together, they unearthed forgotten testimonies, letters from palace servants during the Blitz, stories of Indian and Caribbean soldiers who guarded the gates during wartime, records of immigrants who built and cleaned the palace in silence while the world admired its grandeur. For Fayez, it was not just research. It was redemption, a way to give voice to those erased from history. Scene 6, The Book. By 1997, Fayez published Buckingham Palace, The Untold History. It was not a bestseller in the traditional sense, but it stirred waves in academic and immigrant circles. Newspapers called it a book that makes the palace breathe. For the first time, the stories of forgotten men and women were woven into the narrative of Britain's most iconic residents. The Queen herself, intrigued, invited Fayez to a small reception at the palace. Standing in the grand hall, chandeliers glittering above him, Fayez felt the weight of history pressing down. He thought of his father's taxi, his mother's tired hands, his great-grandfather's faded photograph. He was not just a visitor anymore. He was a storyteller, reclaiming a history that belonged to many but was told by few. Scene 7, The Ending. Years later, Fayez returned to Brooklyn to visit his aging mother. She held his book in trembling hands, tears running down her face. You brought us full circle, Beta, she whispered. Your great-grandfather stood outside those gates in silence, and now, because of you, his story is inside forever. That night, Fayez sat by the window where his dream had begun as a boy. The New York skyline shimmered, and he thought of London's palace across the ocean. He realized the truth: Buckingham Palace was not just about royalty. It was about human endurance, about how history belongs not only to the powerful but also to those who carried bricks, cleaned halls, and guarded doors in the shadows.